Recording in progress.
Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Lecha, back in Eretz Yisrael. It's feeling so blessed, like Avram Avinu came in the Shabbos to Eretz Yisrael. Hashem returned back to Eretz Yisrael. And, you know, there's so many amazing things in the Pasha. There are always so many amazing things in the Pasha. But there's a few things that came together this week. This week was the yahrzeit of Meir Shapiro, the founder of Daf Yomi, the one who built the first dormitory yeshiva in the world. And he has a very beautiful understanding of a section of the Torah where HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns to Avram and he tells him, go outside and see if you can count the stars. And then he tells him, Koh Yihyeh Zarecha, this is the way your children are going to be. And all the commentaries wonder, why was it necessary for Avraham Avinu to go outside? There are many, many beautiful pshatim and explanations, understandings. But the God tells him to count the stars if you can count them. Koh Yihyeh Zarecha, this is the way your kids are going to be. The simple understanding, of course, that God was saying that your kids are going to be like stars. They're going to be as numerous as the stars in the sky. But maybe God was sending a different message. Says Meir Shapiro, the message that God was sending to Avraham Avinu was he asked him to go outside and to count the stars, to do something that was impossible. But Avraham Avinu, with his emunah, with his bitachon, Avraham Avinu with his strength, didn't worry about whether this was something that was possible or wasn't possible. To Avraham Avinu, there was nothing that was impossible. And when he went outside to count the stars, though it was nothing that he was going to be able to finish, but then nevertheless he did all he could to attempt to try to do that which he was expected of him and that which he was commanded to do. God turns to Avraham Avinu and he says to him, Koh Yihyeh Zarecha, this is the way your kids are going to be. Your kids are going to have the koyach, they're going to have the strength to be able to try the impossible, to be able to push themselves to do the impossible. You know, we say that Hillel is an indictment to all the poor people. When a poor person dies, goes up to Shemayim, and God asks the poor person, did you learn Torah? The person says, how could I learn Torah? I was so busy with worrying about Parnasa. How could I learn Torah? And God says, were you more impoverished than Hillel? And the story of Hillel was that Hillel had just such little money. And he used it normally part of his money to take care of his family, part of his money to pay tuition, to get into the Beis Medrash, to be able to study. There was a time that he didn't have any money to get into the Beis Medrash. And he went up to the roof, and it snowed on him. And while he was listening to the shir, and he froze. When they came in the next morning, they saw that it was dark. The skylight was dark. And they realized that there must have been something up there. They went up, and they found Hillel frozen in the snow. They brought him down. They thawed him out. And that action of Hillel saying, nothing's going to stop me from learning Torah, that became an indictment to every poor person. But you have to ask the question, was it obligatory for Hillel to do that? Because if it wasn't obligatory, then how is that mechayev me? How is that an indictment to me? What, that I wasn't as fantastic as Hillel? I wasn't as much of a Superman as Hillel was? And if it was obligatory, then why do I care whether Hillel did it or not? It shouldn't matter whether Hillel did it, because at the end of the day, we all have to do it. So I think what the Talmud, what the Gemara is telling us is that Hillel is an indictment, because normally we look around and we see what's possible and impossible. We look around the world and we see what people are doing, and we define what's possible or impossible. And up until that point, it was impossible for a poor person to learn Torah. Hillel going up to that roof showed that it was possible. Hillel said, no, a poor person can do this. A person can push themselves. A person can go beyond any kind of limitations and accomplish amazing things. And that's why Hillel became an indictment, because Hillel showed us that what we up till now had been calling impossible is not impossible. But the $1,000,000 question is, where did Hillel get his model from? Who was Hillel's mentor? Who did he look at and say, well, it really is possible? Hillel had no mentor. He looked at himself. Hillel, like Avram before him, understood the words of God's promise, Koh Yihyeh Zarecha. This is the way your kids are going to be, that they're going to know and understand. They're going to be able to pull out of themselves that which normally would have been impossible. Because we have that ability. We have to believe in ourselves that we have that ability to do things that others might claim are impossible. But we can find those kochos inside of ourselves if we dig deep and we look deep and we pull deep. We can bring amazing things out of ourselves. This was Rabbi Meir Shapiro's understanding of that promise of God to Avram. And that was the way that Rabbi Meir Shapiro lived his life. He began Daf Yomi. He began this program where thousands of people already then were learning. Now, tens, hundreds, perhaps millions of people are learning Daf Yomi, are connected to each other through the same Daf of Gemara every single day. It was impossible. Nobody thought it would take off. But he understood that you can't cower to the impossible. He looked at the yeshiva. He looked at what was happening in the world. He looked at the way that yeshiva bachrim were being treated, the disdain that they were being looked at, because they were seen as leeches. They were seen as just sponging off of communities. So he built the yeshiva with a dormitory, a beautiful yeshiva, an incredible building. For those days, for nowadays, it's an incredible building. You can still go into that building. I had the zchus, the merit, to be able to make two siyumim, two completions of a tractate of Talmud, there in the Beis Medrash of Meir Shapiro. Because he knew no boundaries. The only thing that could stop him was death itself. Because Koh Yihyeh Zarecha, because of that promise that God made, this is the way your children are going to be. And when Avraham Avinu and Yitzchak went up to the Akedah, and he tells the others that were with him to wait there, and we're going to go ad Koh. We're going to go ad Koh Yihyeh Zarecha. We're going to show that this is impossible. This is impossible. A father to slaughter his child, a child to give himself over to slaughter, to the slaughter, it's impossible. Koh Yihyeh Zarecha. Impossible doesn't exist for a person that's blessed with the blessing of Avram. And we have to recognize that every single one of us is blessed with that blessing. Impossible, they say? Nothing is impossible. Nothing can stand in our way because of the promise that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave to Avraham Avinu. Koh Yihyeh Zarecha. That's the way your kids are going to be. They're going to have the koyach, the power, the fortitude, the desire to do what others might call impossible. And to recognize that if you don't cower and you don't back off, if you pull deep inside of you, what we can accomplish is far beyond our wildest imaginations. When we hear those words, the Shabbos land in the Torah, let them land inside of us. Koh Yihyeh Zarecha. That's the way your kids should be. Always push yourself to do what others call impossible, and you'll recognize that we only have one word. It's possible. Have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing Shabbos.